Modern humans were not guaranteed to survive. Another human species nearly took our place for most of human history. We weren't alone. We shared this planet with other humans. Not animals, not ancestors. Humans, some of them were stronger than us. Some were tougher. Some were better adapted to cold. Hunger and danger, one of them came dangerously close to replacing us entirely. And if a few moments in history had gone differently, you would not exist. This story begins long before cities, before farming, before writing. It begins during a time when the world itself was hostile. The earth was colder than it is today. Ice covered much of the northern continents. Forests shrank. Grasslands expanded, animals migrated or died, and humans, different kinds of humans, spread across Africa, Europe, and Asia. We weren't dominant, yet we weren't special. Yet we were just one competitor among many in Europe and Western Asia. Another human species had already made itself at home. They lived there for hundreds of thousands of years before we arrived. This matters because when we finally entered their world, they weren't adapting to it. They had already mastered it. They knew the land in ways that only long survival allows. They knew which valleys flooded, which animals returned each season, which winters killed the careless. Their bodies reflected that knowledge. They were shorter, wider, and denser than us. Their chests were broad, their muscles thick, their bones heavy. This wasn't random. It was survival written into their anatomy. In freezing climates, losing heat means dying, and they lost less heat than we ever could. They didn't outrun danger. They endured it. They hunted massive animals at close range, not with long throws or speed, but with proximity. They walked straight toward animals that could kill them. They closed the distance. They trusted strength, timing, and each other's stone-tipped spears. Powerful thrusts, coordinated movement. This kind of hunting left marks. Animals fought. Backbones broke, teeth shattered, joints were crushed. Nearly every adult skeleton we've found tells the same story. A life filled with injury, and yet they survived, not briefly, for decades. Survived wounds that would still be fatal today. That alone tells us something uncomfortable. These were not fragile humans. They were not inferior humans. They were hardened by a world that tried to kill them every day. They used fire constantly, not just to survive the cold, but to reshape their biology. Cooking broke down food before it entered the body. It released more energy. It fed muscle. It fed brain. Their brains were not smaller than ours. Sometimes they were larger. They were not slow thinkers. They were focused thinkers. Their tools reflect that they shaped stone with care and consistency, not for beauty, for reliability. Every tool had a purpose. Every edge mattered. Nothing was wasted, because waste meant hunger. They lived in caves, but also built shelters in open land. They adapted their homes to the landscape around them, and they did something else that matters deeply. They cared. We know this because some individuals lived for years with injuries that made survival impossible. Alone, broken legs that healed crooked, missing teeth that made eating painful, infections that required constant attention. These people were fed, protected, kept alive. Someone chose them. They buried their dead, sometimes with tools, sometimes with animal bones, sometimes with care that looks deliberate. This was not instinct. This was culture. This was human. While they lived this way in Europe and Asia, we were still mostly in Africa. Our bodies told a different story. We were slimmer, taller, built for heat and long-distance movement. We didn't overpower animals. We followed them. We relied on endurance, on persistence, on traveling farther with less energy. Our strength was flexibility when the climate began to shift. We didn't stay put. We moved slowly, carefully. We followed animals across changing landscapes. We followed water through dry regions. We followed opportunity wherever it appeared. Eventually, we left Africa, and that is when everything changed, when we entered their territory. We were outsiders. This was not our world. It was theirs. We struggled in the cold. We burned energy just to stay warm. We needed more food for the same survival. If survival had been decided by strength alone, we would not be here. But survival is never that simple at first. We likely avoided each other. Different groups, different territories, but over time, avoidance failed. We hunted the same animals. We sought the same shelters. We faced the same dangers. Sometimes we fought.
The herd is moving
Sometimes we
closer.
learned we copied their
Yes,
tools.
we must act now.
They copied ours. And sometimes we did something more intimate. We mixed, we interbred. It tells us something critical. The line between us was thin. They were human enough, asterisk. Close enough, asterisk, similar enough their children could become part of our groups, and ours could become part of theirs today. Many of us still carry their DNA not, symbolically asterisk, biologically genes that affect immunity, genes that affect skin, genes that affect how our bodies respond to cold. They are not completely gone. They are inside us, but the balance between us was fragile. Climate became colder and more unstable. Ice advanced and retreated. Unpredictably large animals declined. Food became harder to find. This is where the competition quietly shifted. Their groups were small, often isolated. When a few adults died, it mattered. When a season failed, it mattered. When disease spread, it mattered. Our groups were different. We lived in wider networks. Groups stayed connected across long distances. Ideas traveled. Tools spread. Knowledge accumulated. When one group struggled, another could help. When one failed, another survived. This wasn't about intelligence or bravery or worth. It was about scale over thousands of years. Their populations declined, not all at once, not everywhere. Some groups survived longer. Some adapted, some merged with us, but eventually they disappeared as a distinct people, and only then do we name them. They were Neanderthals. For hundreds of thousands of years, Neanderthals dominated large parts of the human world. They survived ice ages, predators, volcanic winters. They were not a stepping stone. They were not a failed experiment. They were a parallel humanity, and they almost replaced using parts of Asia. Another human group lived alongside both us and Neanderthals. We know them only through fragments. No faces, no complete skeletons, only DNA. They lived in extreme environments. Frozen regions, high mountains, places where oxygen was scarce and survival demanded. Biological change, they adapted in ways we still rely on today. Some of the genes that allow modern humans to survive high altitudes came from them. They, too, were almost us. They, too, vanished. They are called Denisov-Vanstiger. These humans reveal something deeply unsettling. Our survival was not destiny. It was circumstance. If climates had shifted differently, if populations had grown differently, if chance had tilted another way, we would not be here. There was no final battle, no moment where humanity was crowned the winner. Just pressure, just adaptation, just survival. Neanderthals didn't disappear because they were weak. They disappeared because the world changed faster than small populations could adapt. We didn't survive because we were better. We survived because we were luckier and more connected. That distinction matters, because it means our existence is fragile. Every human alive today descends from a narrow survival funnel.
Now,
A
I
few
will signal
thousand
the others.
individuals at certain
They sense
points
us.
in our
Prepare.
past. We are not the default outcome of evolution. We are the remainder. When we look at Neanderthals, we are not looking at failures. We are looking at ourselves under slightly different conditions. Same fears, same bonds, same struggle, different ending. And the unsettling truth is this: if history had tilted just a little, we would be the extinct ones. The caves would still exist. The tools would still be found. Another species would look at our bones and wonder why we disappeared. That is why this story matters. Because it's ancient, but because it reminds us how thin the line really is. We are not inevitable. We never were. This story made you uncomfortable. That's the point. Humanity was not guaranteed. And there are many more stories like this about humans who almost replaced us, and worlds where we nearly disappeared. If you want to understand who we really are, subscribe to the channel. like the video so this story reaches more people, and share it with someone who thinks human history was simple, because it wasn't, and it still isn't.